Thanks, Michael. I'd be happy to. Well,
All
good
right.
evening, Chaucer's staff and public. My name is Nick Norman, and I'm here tonight to support Aaron's project, but also here as a friend and to introduce the author and photographer behind his book launch. And it's my honor and privilege to introduce Aaron Howard. Aaron began photographing Isla Vista in college while attending UC Santa Barbara. He moved here in 2007 to study environmental science and brought his camera and surfboards with him. After graduating, he worked locally for an oceanographer and then attended UCSB's Distinguished Bren School of Environmental Science and Management for his master's degree. He specialized in coastal marine resources and also worked as a photographer for UCSB Sustainability. After grad school, Aaron worked for UCSB's Marine Science Institute, conducting research at our local beaches, and also for Parks and Recreation in Isla Vista doing landscape management. Aaron's camera has been a steady anchor throughout his academic and professional pursuits. Aaron's first exposure to photography was with film cameras in a darkroom. He then transitioned to digital photography in college and photographed the many moods of Isla Vista's oceans, landscapes, and wildlife. In 2021, Aaron began sorting through his portfolio with the goal of eventually making a book to be a tribute to Isla Vista, a place that has touched the lives of so many people who have passed through over the years. So fast forward 3 years later, and Aaron is now happy to present the culmination of his efforts. And it's this book, wonderfully titled Isla Vista Seasons, Ocean, Land, and Light. Hello, everyone. Welcome. This wonderful 300-page coffee table book showcases this 15-year portfolio of Isla Vista's natural environment and takes the reader on an eye-opening journey through the iconic beach town and landscape of Isla Vista. So we're really thrilled to showcase it tonight. I'm sure he has a lot to share, and I just have some questions for him, and then we can open it up for Q&A. So with that, Aaron, it's nice to have you here.
Yes, yeah, thank you, and thanks to Chaucer's for the opportunity to be here and everyone that made it out.
Yeah. So first and foremost, thinking about this book, what does Isla Vista mean to you, not only as a place, but as a subject for artistic possibilities?
Isla Vista has always been represented a theme of harmony to me. If we kind of go back in time a bit, the native settlers of the land, they lived in a beautiful harmony with their natural resources. And fast forward to today, Isla Vista has a tempo, a beat to it. Sometimes that's dictated by the weather. Sometimes that's dictated by what part of the academic year it is. There's these pretty distinct rhythms that you can get intimate with when you're there, and so it's always been this theme of harmony, and so capturing that was really how I kind of transitioned it from being more of a place to a form of artistic expression. Being surrounded by such amazing natural beauty has inspired me to capture that and in different ways, and kind of have a way for people to almost rediscover what Isla Vista means to them. And it's whether that be in terms of photography or what sort of art you may do in a recreational sense. It's a really inspiring place. You're also surrounded by a lot of young college students, providing a pretty notable buzz around the town, right? Literally and figuratively, I guess. But it can be inspiring. You've got future important people coming out of there and moving here to whether they're working at UCSB or researching, etc. So it's really a place of harmony in a lot of ways, and a beautiful inspiration for artistic expression.
Thank you. You've lived in Isla Vista for well over 10 years now, and I think a lot of that familiarity or intimacy with the natural environment does come through in the images that we see in this book. Can you share a bit on how you have both been shaped and also been shaped by and also shaped Isla Vista, that process?
So I guess from a more literal standpoint in terms of how I've shaped Isla Vista, one of my jobs has been doing landscape management in Isla Vista for Parks and Recreation. So there have been a lot of trees and native plants that I've been responsible for literally putting in the ground. And so there's that sort of, stewardship, shaping of the town that, I'm proud to say I've been a part of. In terms of this book, and I'll speak to that a little more later, but, really given Isla Vista's natural framework, some identity, with this book. And then, in terms of how I've been shaped by Isla Vista, it was a really important part of, very transitional part of, your life when you're in college. And, it's really taught me to appreciate the natural beauty and live amongst it, in hopefully a harmonious balance, as I mentioned before. Yeah, that's about it.
Fantastic. Elements and the forces of nature are very much central figures in your book, with also change being a major theme. How does your book generate commentary necessarily on preservation, and what are some messages you hope readers might take away from your book?
I'm hoping it brings a lot of awareness to just how close we actually are living to some pretty fragile special ecosystems, whether it be the marine life or the life on land. I think the book really showcases that in kind of an eye-opening and sometimes surprising way. So we really are living amongst fragile, beautiful ecosystems. And so one of the hopes of this book was to have it sort of engender a sense of appreciation and maybe even preservation, whether it be simple things like prioritizing and valuing old trees, planting new trees, just making sure that we do live in balance with the land, just like our just like the first settlers there.
Very good, wonderful. How did this particular project challenge you as a photographer, and what were some of the things you might have learned during the creative process?
I'd say as a photographer, my biggest challenges were sort of on the back end of all these, all the effort that went into this. Obviously there's just taking pictures, which is, being a photographer, but in terms of sharing that with people and getting it out into the world, that was where my kind of weaknesses and limitations were. So learning that process and stepping out of my comfort zone with regards to that has been, the biggest challenge. And then again, just going, if you're going to go the route of creating a book, that's been one of the, biggest learning processes that I've had, having to sort of balance, business and, your photography and just how you want to, convey your work. The photos themselves are art, but then how you present it and in what way and how you frame it is also another form of art. So there are a lot of things that I kind of learned about myself, and that beyond just the photos themselves being a form of art, just the entire comprehensive book itself.
Nostalgia seems to present itself in the familiar images we see, such as in Stork Tower, along Del Playa Drive, and of course Platform Holly. But the book often surprises the reader with beautiful and intricate new detail. Do you think it would be fair to characterize your book as a process of sort of rediscovering Isla Vista?
Yeah, to an extent, definitely. Isla Vista has a reputation, as most people know, of just being a dense college party town next to a renowned university, with some pretty sunsets and et cetera. But this book really dives into some of the corners of IV that some people may have never seen or experienced, and I think it really sheds light on these areas and these moments that are missed by a lot of people. Of course, everyone's probably seen a pretty sunset there, and many of those are in this book. But it really goes beyond that. From small forms of life, wildlife that I've captured, to expansive landscapes and eye-opening sunsets. So I think there's potential for people that may have had a kind of a limited experience in IV, after looking through this book, to really see it in a new light.
Wonderful. What inspired you to publish Isla Vista Seasons really in the first place?
Personally, I wanted closure for my 15-year portfolio. I've done calendars for about 10 years, which has been a fun way to connect my photography with others. But I knew that I knew that something like this existed in my portfolio and also in my capacity to, to make this. So I'd say just, beyond the closure for myself, just really wanting to, share this with as many people that this town has touched. Whether you've had a fun weekend in Isla Vista or a 4-year term there, going to college, or, a long-term resident, it really has impacted such a huge variety of people and scope of people over the years. And having the opportunity to share that with anyone that's interested was, one of the biggest inspirations for me, as well as a tribute to the place. It's a special place. It always seems to be on the back burner and sideline when it comes to, certain, political or funding issues, or all that kind of stuff. And, I really wanted to create a book that kind of went against that and showcased it for all its, all its beautiful glory. It was one of the most dense populations of Chumash tribe, from Goleta Slough to, Devereaux Slough over there at Sands Beach, and of course Isla Vista in between. And there's a reason that it was so populated, and it, just paying tribute to the land and the people there before us was another main inspiration.
Fantastic.
Hi, how you doing?
Why did you theme the book by seasons?
Well, that was a long process for me to decide, but I realized that it's kind of a twofold answer here. First of all, Isla Vista is a pretty small place. Jurisdictionally, it's only really 1 square mile, but geographically, it's a little more than that, from Campus Point to Sands Beach. And I think it was the best way to show kind of the same area over and over again in its different moods. Of course, there's a lot of variety in here, but there's intentionally a lot of repetition for a compare and contrast sort of framework. Showing off different sunsets, different seasons, etc. And also, you hear, like, living in Southern California or Santa Barbara, oh, we don't have seasons here, right? Well, this was a fun way for me to, show the world that, hey, there's subtleties in our seasons. Sometimes they can be dramatic, sometimes not, but they are there. And if you're, got a keen eye and an interest in nature, you can definitely find those.
Thank you. Who might the audience be for this book?
So ideally, anyone that's enjoyed Isla Vista, whether you go there on the weekend to surf, whether you're in college there, kind of like what I touched on before. The audience could be quite broad. As you know, Isla Vista has been an extremely transitional place for people coming in and out of college more recently, and so there's a lot of people that it touches, and that audience can be, like I said, far and wide. There's about 250,000 alumni that went to UCSB that probably had some enjoyable experience in the Isla Vista nature. So yeah, there's a huge audience. It's just a matter of reaching them.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing. The last question is just, where do you go from here?
From here, the goal is to obviously share as many books as I can with as many people as I can. But beyond the books, I'd like to transition into some larger prints to showcase my work, whether that be large canvas prints in a office setting, or a hotel, or a business, people's homes, etc. So as much as this is intended to be a coffee table book, I see the potential for some people wanting some wall hangers on their interiors.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations, and it's been a privilege interviewing you, and yeah,
Thank you.
It's a beautiful book, and I'm so happy to be here supporting you, and yeah, just celebrating you on these efforts. It's really an amazing piece of work. So congratulations.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
You want to show us?
Yeah, and I was gonna go behind the scenes onto just a few of my 5 of my favorite photos. And feel free to ask some questions if you'd like during this moment. But
That's amazing.
this one I call Morning Light, and it's taken at Isla Vista Beach, right below the staircase at the far west end of town. This morning in particular was absolutely freezing. My hands were numb. It doesn't look that cold, but it was in the middle of winter. The air temp was far colder than the water, and it was very, very cold. It was about during the shortest days of the year. where the sun is setting, the sun is rising, to the east, but from Isla Vista's standpoint, it appears to be rising over the ocean because you have the whole Santa Barbara Channel to the east of you. So during maybe 9 months out of the year, the sunrise is usually coming up over here, kind of over the land and over the mountains. But for a few months of the year, it's coming up right over the ocean, and you get the opportunity to have a beautiful backlit wave with different colors. But you also have to consider, the waves, they don't always, crest over and create an opening like that, right? Which adds a little like depth and dimension to it. And you usually get this at high tide. The high tide brings the waves closer to the shore, and it makes them break over shallower water. And so you do get that barreling effect. And so really a lot of elements have to come together to get a shot like this.
How long were you in the water for that to get that one shot?
I think that was probably about a 30-minute morning morning go out. Yeah. My next photo is one of my favorites.
Wow.
This is a sunset, winter sunset, from behind the sand dunes at Sands Beach. There's only one of these trees left. This photo was taken about 10 years ago. These are some cypress trees, what's left over of the so-called enchanted forest out there. And just the layering and the colors of this I love. I'm really glad I captured it before the trees, just between different storms over the years, they've all kind of come down. One thing I do like about this photo, takes a keen eye to see it, but platform holly, the oil rig offshore there, it almost looks like a little ornament hanging off a Christmas tree. And I always kind of thought that was a fun little thing, unintentional. Just a classic Isla Vista sunset. No edits were made to the colors here. This is just the earth doing its thing.
What time of year did you?
This was in winter.
In the winter.
Okay.
It looks like winter.
Next we have.
Hey, Joe. Welcome.
Next we have my cover shot.
Yeah. Amazing.
I believe it's not titled this in the book because it's the cover shot, right? But this photo is called Winter Colors, and it's probably my favorite photo that I've taken of Isla Vista. This was at sunset in the winter time, and what was different about this photo was, as you can see from my last photo, I'm a little lower, closer to the water surface on this one, right? I'm really trying to get low and see the inside of the wave. But on this one, as I was taking photos, initially I was lower to the water surface, but I saw these beautiful streaks of color from the sunset coming over the top of the breaking wave. And so I kind of stood up a little bit instead of being, fully submerged in the water. I'm only in about waist deep water here. And I was able to capture this beautiful streak of color coming over the cresting wave. And my favorite part about this photo is the illuminated whitewash that's about to break. A fraction of a second later, the point here would have been covered by the whitewash, exploding. So the timing of this photo for me was just perfect. Any sooner you wouldn't have had that color coming through there, and the droplets of water about to kind of explode upwards. And any later, like I said, it would have covered the point. And I chose this to be my cover shot because it encompasses the three words in the subtitle of my book: ocean, land, and light. And I think the photo just speaks for itself.
Wow. Aaron, you mentioned before that you learned on film. How old were you when you actually started taking photographs?
Well, I used a cheap plastic camera going on some trips when I was younger, right? But I was a junior and senior in high school, and we had an amazing opportunity to take photography as an elective. We had a really talented teacher who got us dialed in from, literally making a pinhole camera out of an oatmeal, cylindrical container. And I remember I had the whole class of 30 people, all had to do the experiment. And for one reason or another, I had the best photo, best exposure, best everything. And we were literally told to just open up our flap, the pinhole camera, and just point it at something. guess what you think would be a good exposure time and close it, right?
Oh wow.
And then mine ended up being like, according to the teacher, the kind of the most like successful one. And so I was like, no, that's pretty cool, I'll take it. And ended up taking, AP photography the next year, and just learning all the ins and outs of film photography. Moving up here, I wish I could have kept with that, but digital was just the easier option with all my other endeavors. I'm really glad to have that foundational, teachings in, the more, rooted version of photography there.
How many of those trees are still there?
A good number, but they've decreased a lot over the years. This biggest one at the top of the point there fell down in this year's rain and windstorm this year, and a couple others have gone down. The tree line is iconic at the top of that point. There's really no other point around here that has both elevation like that and all the trees. And I think it's a really overlooked feature of Isla Vista, and getting some more cypress. Most of those are cypress, some ukes, but just having those trees remain and maybe some new ones planted is would be a great thing for future generations to enjoy it. Otherwise it'll kind of just look like Campus Point on the other side with no trees, a little barren, a little boring, but so our tree line is really, really special there, and I really like capturing that.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay, this is another one of my favorites, titled, I titled this one Liquid Gold. This was another sunset photo. Again, timing was everything with this, not only just with, clicking the button, but also choosing when to go out. Like I mentioned before, you kind of want the high tides at this beach to get that barreling effect, and really have that light come through. Also, when, again, just like the sunrises, for 3 months of the year, you're getting the sunset visible from, the ocean side of the point, whereas if you were here, standing here in the summer, or even, late spring, early fall, it's not really visible from Isla Vista Beach. You'd have to go out to Sands to see it. So timing's everything. And what's tricky about this though is usually at the end of the day in the winter time, when you're going to have the sun there, the tide is low, not high. But occasionally, during the beginning or end of a season, you will get that sunset, visible from, the Isla Vista side of the point, and also have that high tide. So it's not like you can just go out there any day and just get a cool shot like this. But I do remember this day I went off the bluffs and looked, and every wave was just shimmering with golden color like this, and it was kind of one of those perfect opportunities, and I got a lot of great shots from that day, but this is one of my favorites.
Nice.
Wow.
And then last, not least, there's also a lot of wildlife in my book, but I decided to pull this one. There's a cool kind of story behind this one. This was actually underwater, this anemone, and there was a rock shadowing it perfectly to give it this crispness. This is what it looked like without the shadow of the rock, but I thought it was kind of cool to leave that because it made this cool kind of almost circular like clarity around it, given the circular shape of the anemone. And obviously the colors are just amazingly radiant. I've seen few sea anemones around here that look like that. They are usually very colorful, but usually kind of one tone of a color. But this one just had everything in it. And it's consuming a piece of kelp, which I thought was really cool. I actually took this photo during my grad school research. We were out studying the rocky intertidal zone, and I did bring my camera, not necessarily for shooting personally, professionally, but more for documenting some of our research efforts. But I saw this and had to kind of transition out of that research for a second and make sure to get this shot. And yeah, one of my favorites. Very psychedelic sea anemone, and the fact that it was had a piece of kelp, long strand that it just started consuming, I thought was added a lot of kind of action to the shot. So yeah, again, one of my favorites.
Nice.
And that concludes the little sample of 5 photos from the book, and I'm happy to answer any questions from the audience if anyone's interested about learning more.
I have questions. So you said that an enemy shot
Yeah.
with your camera, but how do you set your settings to be able to blow it up that much and it's
Right.
so clear?
Yeah, so it's all about having a decent quality camera, right? And so luckily I was using a Sony Alpha, which at this point is probably a little outdated, but at the time it was high enough resolution where I could blow it up pretty big. If you're taking a phone, a picture on your phone, for instance, you can, depending on the phone you have, you can blow it up a little bit. It'll probably be pretty clear, but you definitely have to have a pretty good camera if you want that clarity. Blowing it up at a size like this.
How many of these pictures did you take to get that one out of? Was it like just a wow?
That's a
I
good
got it.
question. That's a good question. I think just one.
Wow.
I think just one. Yeah, but it turned out really good. Yeah, I don't know how big I could blow this up and it would stay clear, but probably I could probably double
That's
the
awesome.
surface area of this and it would still be clear.
Wow.
Thanks.
Can you do that for any of the photos that are in the book?
Yeah, they're all high enough resolution to warrant a pretty big print. Maybe not something absolutely enormous, but big enough for my purposes. Yeah.
Do you have any plans for like a gallery showing soon?
Not at the moment, but that is sort of in the works. I've toyed with that idea for kind of various products, like maybe not just prints, but other things too. But definitely taking things one step at a time, and want to focus on the book at first. But I do realize the potential for there being demand or a desire to have again, like if there's a local hotel in Goleta and their closest coastal environment is straight line to Isla Vista, maybe they'd like a local shot of the coastline closest to them in hallways or their rooms or whatever.
Yeah.
So trying to tap into that in the near future, but still have a lot of books I got to get out there and share with people. So one thing at a time. Yeah. Yes.
Any more questions?
So I'm assuming for most of these photos, like especially the CNM, which is underwater, you have to like do these very, very quickly. So how do you manage your shutter speed and your focal point? Just have it all come together and just get the perfect shot, if I may ask.
Yeah. So that I probably should have mentioned. So all the shots that were in the water. So it is with the water housing, right? So I can submerge that and have it get wet and all that. But for these action shots with the waves and whatnot, the waves are moving really quick and you want that detail. So that's basically making a high shutter speed real quick, and then opening up that aperture to really let that light in, because if your shutter speed's a really short amount of time, you're not going to get as much light in, so you got to adjust for that and get your aperture setting very low, which is a bigger opening. And it's trial and error, and usually I'm shooting at sort of the end of the day, and that's the fastest end or beginning of the day, and that's the fastest rate of like light change. So sometimes you got to do some adjustments from the beginning to the end of your even if it's just a 30-minute shoot.
Well, they came together very well, so well done.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Anyone else?
Well, Aaron, thank you very much for joining us, and Nick, thank you so much. Isla Vista Seasons, Ocean, Land, and Light. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.